The Naruto universe offers a plethora of incredibly powerful characters, villain and hero alike. But whether hero or villain, there are very few characters in the Naruto-verse who can stand up to the Yellow Flash, Minato Namikaze. Getting a run-on-sight order during the Third Great Shinobi War, Minato's power is universally recognized. But what happens when you put one of the strongest heroes in Naruto up against some of the strongest villains? In other words, what happens if Minato runs the Akatsuki Gauntlet? That is precisely the topic we'll be exploring today, but before we begin, for more in-depth Naruto discussions and battle breakdowns, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be among the first to know when new content drops. But with no further ado, let's begin. The way I'd like to structure this video is a bit different than how we've seen this type of video done before. Instead of doing 1v1 matchups, I thought it would be more interesting to do teams, since the bottom tier of this list gets obliterated by Minato 1v1. That said, Minato will be in his Hokage form, getting a full recovery between matches. The battle stipulations are standard intel, no prep, fighting in character, and a neutral location. And now that the stage is set, the first duo that Minato is facing off against is the Immortal Duo, Kakuzu and Hidan. Minato should have a sizable speed advantage with the AP to do real damage. The main problems are 1. Hidan's immortality, and 2. Kakuzu's multiple lives. I could see a scenario in which he takes both of them out with a Rasengan, only for one of them to respawn and catch him off guard. However, Minato should be fast enough to react even to a sneak attack from these two. After he reacts to them, essentially coming back to life, Minato is the type to get some space and try to decipher the abilities of the Immortal Duo. He'd know immediately that they have some sort of weird hacks, since he'd know his Rasengan should have put them down. From there, I could see him entering with more caution, potentially deploying shadow clones, and as soon as he destroyed another one of Kakuzu's masks, he'd probably have a good idea for how his ability works. From there, it's only a matter of time. Minato is simply too fast, especially with the FTG, for them to really react to his attacks or successfully tag him, even with team attacks like what they tried to do against Kakashi. With Hidan being stated to be the slowest in the Akatsuki, and there are arguments about the legitimacy of that, but, feat-wise, he's not one of the fastest, and Kakuzu scaling slightly above him, I just don't see a scenario in which the Immortal Duo wins. Minato would certainly be fast enough to place tags on each of his opponents, maybe again using shadow clones to do that, and therefore open opportunities for him to blast through them with the Rasengans. The only scenario in which I see Minato losing is if Minato allows Hidan to tag him for some reason, but that's unlikely. And keep in mind, he might be able to destroy multiple Kakuzu hearts at the same time, seeing how this databook statement directly compares, apparently, Minato's Rasengan to QB-amped Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, and that Rasen Shuriken took out 3 hearts. Now, the reason why Kakuzu wasn't able to get up is because of the hacks presented by the Rasen Shuriken, which essentially severs your chakra network, but even then, if he can take out 3 hearts in one shot, he just needs 2 shots to take out Kakuzu, and nobody can convince me that he's not able to hit him twice with that Rasengan. And as for, Hidan, he is pretty hacks with his ability to survive a ton of different attacks, but Minato's smart enough to figure out that if you just take his head off or damage him enough to where he can't get back up, even though he can still be alive, he wouldn't be able to harm him. So with that speed advantage plus the stamina advantage to outlast them if necessary and his supreme intellect, Minato clears low diff. After defeating the Immortal Duo, the next matchup Minato would be faced with is the artistic duo of Deidara and Sasori. Now, these two actually pose quite a few problems. Firstly, they can both fight at really long range, which is something Minato doesn't really do. Secondly, Sasori has hacks from his poison, so if Minato gets tagged even once by one of Sasori's attacks, it's over. Deidara also should have the AP with his C0 to take out Minato and, his other bombs to be able to harm him, but it's unlikely that he would use C0, and even if he did, Minato should be able to just teleport to one of his tags outside of the blast radius or reverse summon himself to Mount Miyaboku. I could also see Deidara's C4 being an issue because Minato may not be able to detect it. I would argue he probably couldn't detect it unless he was in Sage mode, which he doesn't really go into Sage mode in character. So that could present an issue, but the argument I would make is the fight would probably not get that far, as Deidara kind of uses that as a second to last resort, right behind the C0. Plus, I'm not sure if he would even use it in a battle with Sasori present, considering the fact that it kind of just spreads out in the entire area, and so Sasori would get caught in the blast. This is also why I don't think he would use C0. So I don't think that those potential win conditions actually would matter here, and I do think that if the jutsu were activated, it could be a potential win con, and Minato would at least take some damage, but I think he's smart enough to figure out that Deidara was using Earth Release, and as soon as he started taking some damage, he would probably run Lightning Chakra through himself, just like Sasuke did, so I don't see it as a win con here. That said, I think Minato would probably have to dance around at long range for quite a bit before finding an opening on Sasori, because Deidara will likely take to the sky, at which point he would move in and destroy Sasori's Hiroko puppet with a Rasengan. With the Hiroko puppet destroyed, Minato would be faced with an even greater challenge. Not only would he have Deidara staring him down from the sky, he'd also have to face Sasori with his third Kazekage puppet, 100 puppet army, and puppet body, all of which are insanely deadly and possess weapons that are coated in his unbeatable poison. Now, I do think that Minato would know about his poison, considering the fact that they both fought in the Third Great Shinobi War, which is where both of them sort of got their reputations as the Yellow Flash and Sasori of the Red Sand. That being said, I think he would know to avoid his attacks, and he should be plenty fast enough to avoid his attacks, and eventually sort of work in to get another opening to be able to take him down. But it's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. While he's dodging needles and poison-laced iron sand, Minato will also have to keep track of the bombs dropping from the sky as Deidara rains down hellfire from above. I do think it's possible that Minato takes advantage of this though, and kind of structures his movements in such a way that Deidara may not be able to drop bombs where he's going. So I do think that he could sort of pit them against each other in terms of their styles, but he still has to be wary of every single moment at every single point in time in this fight of the fact that Deidara could drop bombs on him, and any sort of tiny nick from a needle from Sasori could be a major problem. So he's going to have a ton on his plate during this fight. That said, the artistic duo presents some incredibly difficult obstacles for close-range fighters like Minato, but luckily for Minato, he's not just any close-range fighter. Minato's ability to summon Gamabunta and the other Toads is massive in this battle. The Toads would be able to isolate one of the combatants, while Minato blitzes the other. They'd also be able to take away Deidara and Sasori's advantage in the air, as Gamabunta's leaping ability is both fast and powerful enough to get Minato up into the sky close enough to where he can actually do some damage. Basically, no matter how high they fly, Gamabunta should be able to reach them. I do think that the Toads are probably necessary in this battle, as Sasori and Deidara having a very significant long-range advantage would be a huge problem for Minato. Ultimately though, I think that the Toad summonings would create an opening for Minato to put down one of the artists, and once one is taken down, getting in close and taking care of the other will be light work for the Yellow Flash. That said, the win conditions I can see for the duo are 1. Sasori nicking Minato with his poisoned, and 2. Deidara's C0 or C4. However, I believe that Minato is more than fast enough to keep himself from getting hit or taking significant damage from any of these attacks. However, with Minato being a close-range fighter coming up against 2 long-range specialists, it will take a significant amount of time and effort to get close enough to do damage. Inevitably though, Minato will get in close and take them out. Minato wins, mid to high diff. After defeating the artistic duo and popping a Senzu Bean to recover, Minato now finds himself against Kisame and Itachi. Admittedly, this fight is an uphill battle for Minato. Kisame and Itachi both provide a variety of issues for the Yellow Flash, which, to be honest with you, I'm not so sure he can overcome. However, due to his feats in the recent one-shot manga and his performance against Obito and Kurama, Minato could certainly pose a serious issue for both of these combatants. The fact that Minato was capable of countering a Bijou Bomb, albeit suppressed, from the full Nine Tails tells me that he's got the AP to seriously wound both Itachi and Kisame, even if Itachi uses his Susanoo, albeit without the Yatamir. This is further backed up by the fact that Minato's Rasengan is directly compared to a QB-amped Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, and we saw how dangerous that is. However, as I alluded to before, the Yaramir should neg the Rasengan and anything else the 4th Hokage can throw at it, so what this comes down to is who has more win conditions. Because of Minato's fighting style and the hacks provided by FTG, he's a nearly impossible combatant to put down because he's so difficult to get your hands on. However, the pairing of Kisame's overwhelming power and jutsu arsenal, as well as his stamina, with Itachi's one-shot kill moves makes me lean toward the Akatsuki duo. While I believe that Minato is too fast to get hit by the Totsuka blade, it's very possible that Itachi, with his excellent intellect, might use Kisame's jutsu as a sort of distraction and sneak in a jab with the blade that seals anything it pierces into the realm of drunken dreams. Itachi also, of course, has the Amaterasu, which, if he again takes advantage of Kisame's jutsu as a way to get an opening, he might land a hit with the Amaterasu, and I could see that being a potential win con as well. And last but not least, Itachi might be able to get Minato with the Tsukiyomi. Now, I will say it seems like there's a range at which Genjutsu becomes ineffective, as we see here in this panel. I'll let you guys read that. So Minato should be able to just activate FTG to get out of the Tsukiyomi, since FTG is instant. The thing about the Tsukiyomi that makes it so dangerous is that Itachi can control the amount of time that you experience in the Genjutsu relative to the time that passes in the real world, making it basically impossible for you to escape because you don't have any time in the real world to disrupt your chakra flow. However, as I stated before, the FTG is an instant technique, meaning that Minato should be able to activate it and escape the range of Itachi's Genjutsu. However, that's not a win condition, so Minato would just have to return and find a way to get around the terrifying might of his enemies. Albeit, when he comes back, Itachi, if he has used Tsukiyomi, should still be sort of reeling from it, as we know he can't use it over and over again. It's incredibly taxing on his ill, sick, deteriorating body. Realistically, Minato should be able to tag both of them and get them with the Rasengan, but I doubt any openings will be created before one of Itachi and Kisame's win conditions is accomplished. To be honest, Sage Mode wouldn't help him very much here either, as, it does amp his physical abilities, but he can't maintain it for very long, and the Toads wouldn't really help that much either, because Kisame's AoE attacks, his ability to go into that bubble and fuse with Kisame, all of his sort of crazy power moveset, attacks, and defenses should allow for him to sort of neg any of the Toads, so neither Sage Mode nor the Toads will help Minato create an opening, and I just don't see him creating an opening on his own. That said, Itachi and Kisame win with incredibly high difficulty, probably finding a way to finish him off with either an Amaterasu or the Totsuka blade. But I will say, Minato does have the win condition of either outlasting them or finding a way to seal one of them and then isolating the other one. But I do think that Minato versus Itachi by itself is a good fight, so stacking Kisame, the tailless-tailed beast, on top of that, it just might be too much for Minato to overcome. After a long, difficult battle against Itachi and Kisame, Minato comes out of it with an L, with the record of 2-1 against the Akatsuki duos. And for the sake of this video, he would go ahead and pop another Senzu Bean, get fully recovered, and face our next duo, the God and Angel, Pain and Konan. Now this is probably the most interesting matchup in my opinion thus far. Konan doesn't really present much of a threat, but she can provide really solid support, and Minato would have a hard time putting her down due to her Shikigami dance, which basically provides her a form of intangibility and regeneration. However, since her speed scales around base Jiraiya, I could see Minato landing an attack before she can utilize her intangibility, and the Rasengan is on the level of a suppressed Kurama Bijou Bomb, so I think it would do the job. Scaling to a QB amp Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, I can't really argue that Konan has the durability to tank that. So Pain, though, on the other hand, is a smoke demon and an absolute problem. With the Rinnegan's versatility and the abilities of the Paths of Pain all being different and working together, Minato would have to take a good amount of time trying to learn how each of the Paths' abilities work. I could see him getting behind the Diva Path using his speed and trying to take out what he would recognize as the strongest path, since he's pretty smart, and attempting a Rasengan only to get blasted back by the Shinra Tensei. The shared vision would also be a very difficult thing for Minato to get around, as his most likely win condition is a Blitz Rasengan, and the shared vision of the Paths of Pain would basically be able to prevent that, as we see happen against Kakashi in his Raikiri. So, Minato recognizing that just a Blitz Rasengan isn't gonna do it, he would eventually need to summon the Toads or create some Shadow Clones to make some openings for him. However, with the Toads, the Animal Path kind of hard counters them, or at the very least stalemates them. So Minato would be stuck, once again, fighting the Paths of Pain head-on with zero support. I do believe, though, that if the fight gets this far, with Minato being one of the smartest characters in the series, he should be able to devise a way to take down each Path of Pain one at a time, starting with the Naraka Path. Getting deep into the fight, Minato will have already seen the Naraka Path revive one of the others by this time, so he'd recognize that taking him out is the key to taking out the rest of them. And while all of the Paths of Pain have incredibly problematic abilities to deal with if you're a combatant facing against them, the main problem that Pain encounters is that all of his win cons are countered by FTG. Whether it's the Soul Pool, Shinra Tensei, or Chubaku Tensei, or any of the other abilities, Minato can just use the FTG to escape. Also, his raw speed is a real issue for Pain. The Paths of Pain got blitzed by Sage Mode Naruto, but the Diva Path was basically scrapping on par with base Naruto, albeit he had him on his back foot, so his combat speed isn't anywhere near Minato's. That said, it should be a long, drawn-out battle, but I believe Minato finds a way to escape numerous attacks, uses the summons to counter the Animal Path, and eventually devises a systematic way to bring down each Path of Pain one at a time. The Naraka Path, Human Path, Animal Path, and Asura Paths all can be taken down with a single Rasengan, as it does scale quite a bit above Kakashi's Raikiri, and that Raikiri did major damage to the Asura Path, so I do think that if you take something such as a Rasen Shuriken level Rasengan and plant it into the back of these guys, I do think that it would take them down with one shot. So I think he systematically uses his Rasengan to take them down one at a time, but the Preta Path and the Diva Path would still cause some serious issues. I could see him, however, using other means to take down the Preta Path, as the Preta Path would be able to absorb his Rasengan. And it's weird because his absorption kind of forms a bit of a bubble around him, so even like the level 2 Rasengan, or level 2 FTG Rasengan, might not actually work against him, but Minato could amp his physical stats, go into Sage Mode, and just like drop him with one shot. I do think that that is a win condition over the Preta Path, because, you know, he can't absorb Sage Mode. He tried to do it against Naruto, and that didn't work out. So he eventually would be able to take him out, and then finally he'd be facing down the last Path of Pain remaining, the Diva Path, fully amped by Nagato's remaining chakra. This battle right here would be one for the ages. I mean, the Diva Path is an absolute tank, and his abilities are pretty freaking sweet, and I do think to some degree they can kind of hard counter Minato's basic moveset, as Minato is a close range fighter, and being able to kind of use his Shinra Tensei to repel him away and protect himself is huge here. I can also see him trying to use the Chubaku Tensei, but I do think that that would fail, as Minato again can counter that with the FTG. After taking down 5 Paths of Pain with arguably 4 or 5 Rasengans and then some Sage Mode usage, summoning the Toads, using the FTG a bunch, Minato should be pretty low on chakra by this time. But at the same time, Nagato, while he is also a chakra freak just like Minato, he would be getting pretty exhausted as well, as I could see him having used the Shinra Tensei multiple times, using the Chubaku Tensei, using the abilities of the other paths. So this wouldn't become a war of attrition, but they would definitely be fatigued by the time this battle started to wane. And it's at this point Minato's speed and intellect come into play. By this time, Minato will have figured out that there is that 5-second recharge in between the Shinra Tenseis. So I do see a scenario in which Minato takes advantage of that, maybe utilizing a clone or a couple of clones in a similar fashion to the way that Kakashi utilized Choji and Choza in order to take advantage of that delay time. And whenever he kind of gets him to use that Shinra Tensei, maybe pops out of the ground or behind him, or however he does it, I do think he would eventually hit him with a Rasengan that should put him down. After a long and arduous battle using the vast majority of his chakra, Minato would stand the victor. And at the end of the day, speed kills, and Pain just doesn't have the speed to counter the yellow flash. Minato wins incredibly high difficulty. After securing his W, Minato pops yet another Senzu Bean. It's becoming a bit of a problem. And next he faces off against the duo of Obito and Zetsu. And just as a note, this is Orange Mask Obito. I'd like to make a War Arc Obito versus Minato video, so we'll save that for another time. Now, I know that Obito and Zetsu are never really paired up, but they're the last two remaining, so they're paired for the sake of the video. Obviously, Zetsu is no problem, and Minato should be able to defeat Obito, as we have already seen that happen. I do think that this will probably go very similarly to how it went when they fought the first time, but Obito would likely be more careful this time, prolonging the fight. Also, since he doesn't have access to the Nine Tails, and since this statement from the data book seems to imply that he's weakened even several years after fighting Minato, I can't really see a way in which he actually wins. So Minato takes this mid-difficulty. Now this final matchup is probably my favorite. Since we haven't covered him yet, but he was in the Akatsuki, this time we're pairing Orange Mask Obito and Konoha Crush Orochimaru. This duo is actually insane. Just like the matchups before this, we'll be assuming that Obito and Orochimaru are working together and have some sort of chemistry. That said, both of these characters have major beef with Minato for varying reasons, but that alone should be enough to unite them against the man with a flee on sight order, the Yellow Flash. And since this is Orange Mask Obito, he's got experience fighting Minato, but he's also marked. And since Minato says that he never told Obito that the FTG marks never disappear, Obito would have no clue that he was marked until it's too late. However, since Kamui is passive and Obito will likely be fighting more carefully, I could see Minato giving that away at some point during the battle. And with Orochimaru lurking in the background, spamming summons and jutsu, this is no easy fight for Minato. I do believe that the combination of Orochimaru's jutsu and Obito's hacks will prove to be incredibly difficult for Minato to overcome, and contrary to what one might think, I think Minato's focus actually should be on taking down the Snake Man first. Minato's Toad summonings would absolutely be required to battle Manda and the other snake summonings in Orochimaru's arsenal, but the snakes would eventually overwhelm the Toads, as we see Manda go toe-to-toe with Gamabunta and Katsuyu at the same time, and more than hold his own. That said, Minato's speed and efficiency might be able to create an opening to tag Oro in the midst of the chaos. With his Rasengan scaling, again, to a QB Amp Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, Minato should be able to take Orochimaru down fairly easily, but we all know just how slippery Orochimaru is. My guess is that he would be forced to use his body replacement technique 2 to 3 times during his fight, exhausting both his and Minato's chakra. By the time the battle between the summonings and the summoners concludes, with Obito threatening to take Minato into the Kamui dimension at every turn, Minato would be as low on chakra as we have ever seen him. And although he has a tag on Obito, Obito would be aware of that and prepare countermeasures against a blindsided attack. One thing Minato doesn't know about, though, is Obito's Izanagi, which I believe could be the key to Obito sealing the deal. After Minato blitzes and blasts Obito in the back with a Rasengan, Minato will pause to catch his breath. Feeling victorious after a long battle, low on chakra, and probably wounded to some degree, Minato's senses would be dulled. And then, behind him, Obito will emerge again, yanking his former master into the Kamui realm before he can react, and it's at this point the fight would be over. Maybe. You see, it's never actually stated that the Kamui dimension is a sealed dimension, meaning you can only get in or out via Kamui techniques. If Kamui works similarly to Kaguya's dimensions, other space-time techniques would actually allow for entry into and exit out of the realm. We see Sasuke use a summoning jutsu, which is a space-time jutsu, to summon his hawk into Kaguya's realm. So although we don't know if Kamui works this way, it's very possible that FTG, being a space-time jutsu itself, might allow Minato to teleport himself out of the dimension. He could also use a reverse summoning to mount Miyaboku in the same way. If you believe this is how this would work, then Minato likely teleports back to Obito, who would definitely be off guard at this point, and gives him a repeat of the events of their first battle, securing Minato a win with incredibly high difficulty. However, if you believe that the Kamui dimension is only accessible via Obito and Kakashi's Sharingans, Minato loses, securing Orochimaru and Obito a win with incredibly high difficulty. I do think, though, that Minato's ability to fight in a long battle will allow for him to overcome Orochimaru's massive stamina and summonings, because his summonings would counteract his stamina would counteract his, and eventually he would force him, like I said, to use that body replacement to the point where his body began to reject him, like we see in his battle against Naruto in his Four Tails form. So even though Obito would be lurking, trying to take him into the Kamui dimension, because he's fought him before, I think Minato wouldn't have too much trouble to take down Orochimaru. He would just have to use quite a bit of chakra to do it. Then the battle just comes down to your interpretation of how the Kamui dimension works. If you believe that it's a sealed dimension, meaning nobody in, nobody out, unless they use Kamui, then Minato loses. GG, Kamui. But if you believe that it functions similarly to how the other dimensions in Naruto that we've seen function, meaning it's an unsealed dimension, then Minato should be able to teleport himself back to one of the tags he left on Obito, or at the battlefield where he was fighting Obito, or just use a reverse summoning. And at this point, they would both be incredibly low on chakra, but I think in terms of stamina feats, Minato probably has better stamina feats than Obito, so he should be able to outlast him, maybe even using Sage Mode to give himself a little bit of a boost and finish off Obito in an incredibly difficult fight. I do personally lean toward the Kamui dimension functioning similarly to Kaguya's dimension, the other dimensions that we've seen in the series, as we really don't have anything pointing to the contrary. It's never stated to be a sealed dimension, so I don't think there's any reason to believe that it is. So I do think that Minato escapes and finds a way to finish off Obito, but it's entirely up to you guys. It is a bit headcanon-y because we don't know either way. I will say the thing that makes me lean in that direction is this databook statement about the Flying Raijin, basically saying it allows Minato to pass through the wall of space and time. So it essentially implies that he can sort of transcend space and time with this technique, and so a different dimension or a different space-time shouldn't be able to inhibit him from using his space-time ninjutsu to get to where he wants to go. That's my interpretation of it anyway. So, to review, Hokage Minato defeats the Immortal Duo with low difficulty, the Artist Duo with high difficulty, loses to Itachi and Kisame, beats the God and Angel Duo with incredibly high difficulty, beats Obito and Zetsu with mid-diff, and depending on your interpretation of how FTG or summonings would work within the Kamui realm, Minato either clears or loses to the President and Vice President of the Minato Hater Club with max difficulty either way. But what did you guys think? Did I miss anything? Was I 100% correct? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you enjoy this type of content, please feel free to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified each time I upload. But thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day.